Hello everyone, I'm Kritika. So today we will be starting with a new unit, Forensic Biology and Serology. So first, let us know about biology and serology. So we know biology itself, mainly it is involved with the human body system. So thing is that when we go to a crime scene, there are a lot of biological evidences that you encounter in a crime scene. Okay, so that means blood, saliva, sputum, feces, urine, even bile juice, lot of things, intestinal juices, all of those things you may encounter in a crime scene. So how will you collect these evidences? How will you store this, give to a forensic science lab, and what kind of testing procedures will they do in the lab? And how will you identify the suspect and the victim that is involved in a crime scene can be analyzed with the help of forensic biology and serology. So main thing is that we'll be discussing about the human body system. So when coming to the digestive system, we know that our main function of a digestive system is to break down the food mechanically. So when you're eating the food, we know the mastication of food happens in your mouth. The first starting process of digestion takes place in your mouth itself. So you start grinding your food and it breaks down into smaller molecules. And these smaller molecules and nutrients are being first it from the mouth, it is going to the esophagus, to the stomach, then to the small intestine, large intestine, and through the anus, it will come outside as a fecal matter basically. So the breaking down of food happens in your mouth itself. So when the food breaks down, it has been divided or broken down into smaller molecules so that the smaller molecules can be easily absorbed by the walls of your small intestine. So the molecules and nutrients, everything are absorbed by the walls of the small intestine, and the undigested food material is then expelled out of your body as feces. That is about digestion. Now, the important key parts of our digestive system is mouth, esophagus, stomach, small intestine, large intestine, liver, pancreas, and gallbladder. So, mainly in respect to forensic science, fecal matter, vomit, saliva, and gastric contents are the important biological evidences which we encounter at a crime scene. Especially in case of a poisoning case or assault cases, these are some of the biological evidences that you encounter very frequently. So now you can see the image of a digestive system of a human body. So you can see your mouth, it chews the food and mixes with the saliva. Your esophagus will push the food from the mouth to the stomach, and the stomach will produce HCl, hydrochloric acid. So this gastric juice will help down break the food into even more smaller pieces, and the liver will produce bile juice. What does bile do is that it helps in emulsification of fats. So basically, you'll have larger fatty molecules and proteins and all will be there in order to break down into smaller molecules, and mainly for digestion of fats. Your liver only helps in playing a vital role. Then comes your pancreas. Pancreas helps in produces pancreatic juice. It helps in breaking down of carbohydrates, proteins, and fats. Then you have your gallbladder. Gallbladder, what will happen is that liver will produce the bile and gallbladder will temporarily store the bile and then it will release into the small intestine during the process of digestion. And large intestine, what it will do is that it absorbs the water and the undigested food material will basically form the feces and through the anus it will come outside. So small intestine will complete the digestion process, absorbing of nutrients, everything will take place. Your large intestine will absorb the water and expel out as feces. So your main process of digestion will be completed in small intestine itself. Large intestine mainly participates in the process of excretion. Okay, I won't say excretion, actually, it's egestion. So, normally people get confused between excretion and egestion. Excretion is where the metabolic waste from your body is expelled out through the help of urine or through sweat and all. Whereas egestion is the process in which the fecal matter is expelled out of your body. So the undigested material which is expelled out as feces which is expelled out as feces in the body, that particular process is called as egestion. So in forensic, you can see you can encounter feces, vomit, saliva, and gastric contents. So feces will help in analyzing drug poisoning cases or infections and all, even food poisoning cases. Vomit is mainly involved in food poisoning, toxin, and drug cases and all. Saliva is for DNA profiling and for toxin analysis, and gastric contents obviously for food poisoning and for to analyze any kind of medications. Okay. So now we will what is it see one by one in detail. So now we just had a brief introduction about the human digestive system. Now we will start with the human respiratory system. So when it comes to respiratory system, so normally people get confused between respiration and breathing. Breathing, we know it is the exchange of gases. We take inhale oxygen and we exhale out carbon dioxide. This gaseous exchange will take place in your lungs. That is called as breathing. When it comes to respiration, what happens is that mainly cellular respiration, let us assume. So the cells in your body will also require oxygen to perform the metabolic reactions and then the expelling out the carbon dioxide. So mainly this oxygen which is utilized for cellular respiration, that particular process called as respiration. So now coming to respiratory system, we inhale oxygen through our nose. It goes through our lungs, where exchange of gases basically takes place in the alveoli of the lungs. Alveoli are nothing but the structural and functional unit of the lungs. So alveoli, you can see here, alveoli are the structural and functional unit of the lungs. Okay. Alveoli is the structural functional unit of the lungs, which is basically called as the air sacs of the lung. Here only the exchange of oxygen and carbon dioxide will take place in your lungs. So in respect to forensic science, the source of sputum, mucus that is obtained, any kind of respiratory failure and all, asphyxia or strangulation, especially in case of suicides and strangulation, murder cases and all, this sputum and nasal mucus and even what to say, suspecting whether the person has a respiratory failure, which has basically is the cause of death, that can be also be analyzed. So by studying the respiratory system in detail. Now coming to circulatory and cardiovascular system means, so circulatory means first thing that we remember is our heart only. The heart will pump the blood and they'll circulate the blood and transports all oxygen, carbon dioxide, nutrients, hormones, everything will be transported through the help of blood only. Okay, so heart is there and we have blood vessels, arteries, veins, and capillaries. So arteries is the biggest, then comes your veins, and capillaries are the ones which connects the arteries and veins together. And why we know blood is the most important evidence, biological evidence that you get from a crime scene. So a blood pattern analysis of blood stain is when we analyze like what type of crime has been committed. The blood spatter analysis helps us to indicate what is a pattern of bleeding, what kind of internal hemorrhage. Internal hemorrhage is nothing but internal bleeding. So it helps us to reconstruct the events that has happened during the cause of death. So blood is a very vital evidence. So when you see a circulatory system, mainly heart is the one which pumps the blood to the entire body. So the main composition of your blood is RBC, WBC, platelets is there. Then we have something called as plasma. So when you see about RBC, red blood cells means they carry the oxygen from the lungs to the body. They carry the oxygen. White blood cells will help in fighting against any kind of infections and to protect our body and all. Basically, they are the soldiers of our body. And platelets helps in clotting of your blood and all. Okay, so there again something is called as fibrinogen is there. It is a blood clotting factor that is involved in clotting of your blood. Then we have plasma. Plasma is nothing but the highest component of the blood. So first comes your plasma, which is like 55 percentage of your blood is composed of plasma only. Then it is like 45 percentages of RPC, and the balance is nothing but your white blood cells and your platelets. So plasma is that yellowish color, straw color fluid that is having a lot of nutrients, ions, salts, hormones, waste products, carbon dioxide, everything is present in your plasma. Okay, so the main function of your blood is to deliver oxygen and nutrients to the cell and to remove the carbon dioxide and other waste. It also helps in supporting the immune system and helps in regulating the body temperature. So now coming to nervous system. Nervous system is what which controls and coordinates all the activities of your body. We know that, for example, if I'm touching something, my brain is giving me electrical signals or impulses, okay? whether it may be an emotion or whatever process it is. Even involuntary actions like breathing or digestion, excretion, heartbeat, everything is controlled by our nervous system. And the main parts of our nervous system is we have a central nervous system and peripheral nervous system, or the two classification of nervous system. Central nervous system, you have your brain and your spinal cord. And for peripheral nervous system, we have the nerves that is connecting your brain and spinal cord. Whatever nerves that is connecting the brain and spinal cord are coming under the peripheral nervous system. Why do we need to study about nervous system is that any kind of brain injury or spinal cord damage or neurotoxic poisoning, there are certain plant poisons and all certain poisons which will directly go and attack your nervous system, which will again we can understand, okay, this particular toxin has been consumed, that is why this person has got this particular neurotoxic poisoning, or determine the brain death. For all of these things, if you start, for all of these things, nervous system plays a vital role here. Okay, so you can see a nervous system. Here you have a central nervous system. Brain is the one which is like it processes information, helps us to make decisions. Everything is done by your brain. Spinal cord, nothing but it transmits the signals between your brain and your body, is nothing but done by your spinal cord. And peripheral nervous system are the nerves which is connecting your CNS, that is connecting your brain and spinal cord. So there are two type of nerves in your peripheral nervous system. You have your somatic nerves is there, and you have your autonomic nerves are there. Somatic means your voluntary movements will be controlled here. Voluntary movements means like your reading, writing, walking, whatever that you have control of it, that can be controlled by that is being controlled by somatic nerves. Autonomic means involuntary actions like breathing, respiration, excretion, heartbeat, digestion. All these involuntary actions are controlled by your autonomic nervous system. Okay. So that's what I told. In respect to head injury, nerve damage, or any kind of toxic effects, we have there only your nervous tissues and nervous cells plays a vital role. And neurons are the ones which is the structural and functional unit of your nervous system. It helps in transmitting the electrical impulses. Okay, from nerve to nerve, we are helping in transmission of electrical impulses is done through the help of neuron. Okay, I hope digestion system, uh, respiration, and nervous and circulatory is clear. Now we are moving on to the reproductive system. So reproductive system means you have a male and female reproductive system is there. Main function of your male reproductive system or female reproductive system is to produce gametes. So gametes are nothing but for males it is sperm and for females it is ova. Along with that, sex hormones are also produced. So when the sperm and ova, when they fuse together, they undergo a process called as fertilization, which leads to the development of a zygote, then the basically development of offspring. So now in crime scene, especially in case of rape and all, seminal fluid, vaginal secretions, menstrual blood, and especially in sexual assault cases and rape cases, these are the important biological fluids that can be obtained. So these semen stains and vaginal swabs, or even for paternity testing and all, these biological fluids are very, very important. So coming to the reproductive system, so this is an image of a male reproductive system which produces sperm and certain hormones like testosterone and all. Okay, which is responsible for producing secondary sexual characters in male. For example, beard development, pubic hair development, horse voice, and all can be seen through the help of testosterone. For female reproductive system, there is nothing but the fallopian tube. They have a pair of ovary or ova. Then you have your uterus, cervix, and vagina is there. It also produces eggs and hormones like estrogen and progesterone and all, especially important for pregnancy as well as for secondary sexual characters in females as well. Okay. So now coming to the biological fluids in terms of forensic serology, we have blood and blood stains. So the composition of blood, I told you, we have plasma, red blood cells, white blood cells, and we have platelets. So your plasma is of the highest composition. You have like 55% of your blood is composed of plasma, which has mainly water, proteins, and clotting factors are there. Then you have your RBC. We know RBC has something called as hemoglobin. So this RBC And hemoglobin, which is hemoglobin, it has affinity towards oxygen, and hemoglobin and oxygen will combine together, and that is how RBCs are acting like the oxygen carriers, which transports oxygen to your entire body. Then we have WBC, that is nothing but warriors or soldiers of your body, which will fight against any kind of infections and diseases and all. And platelets helps in clotting of the blood. Okay. So now, blood also, the color of the blood determines how old that particular blood stain is. For example, if the blood is very fresh, means it is fresh red in color. As the blood gets older, it becomes a little bit light brown in color, then dark brown in color, and ultimately it becomes like a very blackish color. So, blood can be of different shapes and sizes in a crime scene. It can form either drops or pools or spatter or even smears can basically form. Okay. For example, a drop is like this, whereas a pool of blood also you can find, or else you can find like these kind of sap spatters also. There are different kind of stains and all this there. Then you will have smears as well. So these are some of the different type of blood, shapes that you can encounter in a crime scene. Okay. Sorry about that. So coming to seminal stains. So your seminal stains is nothing but semen. So your seminal fluids will have something called as semen in it. This semen will have the sperm in it, okay, or spermatozoa. So in most of the fertile males, they will have spermatozoa. Seminal plasma is there and certain enzymes. This acid phosphatase is a very important enzyme. This only helps in, fertilization. That is, basically, when you see the diagram of a sperm, means this is a head of the sperm, then comes your body, and then comes your tail of the sperm. I'm not, it's a bad diagram, but still, it's a rough diagram. So your cap of the sperm is cut nothing but called as acrozyme enzyme is there. Okay. So here, this acrosome enzyme, it basically binds with the ova of the egg and helps in the fertilization reaction. And acid phosphatase, fructose, glucose, citric acid and all helps in enrichment of the seminal fluid basically. And we know the color of seminal fluid or seminal stain is grayish white in color. So when it forms on a cloth, when it drops on a cloth and all, it is very stiff in nature when it is dried, and you can observe it with the help of fluorescence. Fluid under UV spectroscopy, it may fluorescence. Clear? So now the next is screening and confirmatory test to see. I told you like whether you encounter a sperm or a seminal fluid or something else, we don't know. We might get confused. For that, we have to do certain confirmatory tests and screening tests to determine whether it is actually semen or not. So first test that we do is acid phosphatase test. So this is a very good test because sperm itself has acid phosphatase in it. So acid phosphatase test when you're doing means when you get a fast purple in color, it is an indicator that there is that is basically sperm. It is a presumptive test. Then if you take that particular semen and you observe it through a microscope, you can find head, midpiece and tail will be there, which is again the structure of a sperm. So it is again an identification. Then we have a certain immunoassays are basically there is very important. There is something called as prostate specific antigen or P30. So these are nothing but molecular markers which will determine that it is a particular biological stain. So this prostate specific antigen P30 is an identification of molecular marker, basically says that okay, this is particular, this is a semen, like that. Okay. Now the next is about saliva. Saliva, we know mainly it is made up of water, mucus, and main important thing is they have something called as salivary amylase. And remember, the salivary amylase helps in digestion of starch. Okay. So helps in digestion of the starch and many, your carbohydrates and all, no? For them to break down into smaller molecules, for that you need amylase. Electrolytes and epithelial cells are nothing but innermost layer of your mouth. You will have epithelial cells basically there. The saliva will be present in your cigarette butts, in drinking glasses, in bite marks, or in envelopes and all. Saliva will be present. Okay, so main thing is to identify this amylase activity. We can do starch degradation and certain commercial kits are available. We can also check for the epithelial cells. So inside the mouth epithelial cells, you can do DNA profiling of the cells to identify the particular person, or you can link the suspect to the object. Okay, that is drinking bottle or cigarette butts or even bite marks and all. You can analyze a particular person. Okay, so now, okay. Now the next is urine. So urine mainly it is composed of water, urea, keratinine is there. Certain ions and metabolic waste products are basically present in your urine. And always remember, urine is excreted from your body. So your feces is that process it is egested out of your body. That particular process is called as egestion. And urine is a metabolic waste which is excreted out of your body as a waste product. And we know the color of urine is yellowish stains. It has a very characteristic odor also. So chemical test for urea, keratin and all is there. And sometimes urobilinogen is also there. So, urobilinogen is nothing but the pigment which gives a slight yellowish color stain to the urine. Similarly, for fecal matter, we have something called as stericobillinogen or stericobillin, which gives a brown color pigment to the fecal matter. So, sometimes you can find urobilinogen reactions as well. So, in terms of toxicology, urine obviously for drug analysis, for alcohol analysis, for poison analysis, and all. For all of these things, for drug abuse cases, poisoning cases, even for pregnancy cases, and all, urine is a very important sample as there are certain, hormones, all these are present in your urines, which can be analyzed. Okay. Now, Now the next is fecal matter or stool. So the undigested food residue, bacteria, your bile pigments, mucus, water, all these are excreted through your fecal matter, that is stool. So it is basically brown in color. And how can you basically see a fecal matter? So microscopy of the fecal matter, you can see undigested food particles, certain parasites, or sometimes certain characteristic plant cell is also there. Okay, so for example, there was one particular case, I don't remember the case, which happened in the 1980s or 90s. This happened in China. So that particular serial killer, he was targeting that particular family. He went there. He didn't steal anything actually. He just murdered the entire family, husband, wife, and children. He murdered. And what he did was that he ate all the food from fridge. He made a mess of the house, and then he went to the bathroom and he defecated there. He didn't even flush or do anything. And forensic investigators came, they analyzed it, and they were able to find out that he had like something like lettuce or something he had. But till now, it is an unresolved case. They were not able to find out the particular suspect was involved in the crime scene. And it was a very brutal murder as well because they were of a reputed family, did not have any kind of enemies, and he did not steal anything. What was his motive is still now it is an unresolved case. So similarly, so these are certain cases where the fecal matter will help us analyze like what he had at the last. Any unique characteristic plants are not present in your fecal matter. Everything can be observed through the microscopy test. And chemical tests for stericobillin or urobilinogen or sometimes even blood can be found in the fecal matter. It is very rare to find out fecal matter, but in sexual assault cases and all, you can easily, it will be useful for us. Okay. And in child abuse or to show the presence of a person and all, no. So for that, you can use the fecal matter here. Now comes the pus. So pus is mainly the dead things, dead and so the here and there live white blood cells. White blood cells are called as leukocytes, bacteria, tissue debris, serum, everything will be present in your pus. And the pus is normally like yellowish white or in thick material. And from infected wounds, it is very thick pus will come. So normally yellowish white in color. So to identify certain microorganisms and all, no, you can utilize the pus as an evidence. Okay. So there will be some DNA also be present there, especially in anti-mortem injury or from the infected wound. If you get for example, a crime scene, if I'm able to get a pus means I'll be able to identify the particular. It will be help it identify any kind of DNA is there or what are the bacteria or debris or leukocytes which is present. It'll help in linking the victim or suspect to the crime scene. For that, I can basically help. Okay. And now comes hair. This is again another important biological evidence that you can encounter in a crime scene. So there are important parts of hair is there, which you can see from this diagram. So this is your hair follicle, and the study of hair is called as trichology. So now this is your hair shaft. Okay. So this is your hair bulb, and this is your hair shaft. So this is a bulb-like structure. Here you have your subcutaneous fat is there, and then you have arteries and veins which will supply the blood and all. And then this is your hair bulb is there, your hair shaft is there, and then you can see, right, this is your hair matrix, and here you have your sebaceous gland which will basically produce oil for the growth and nourishment of your hair. So then the outermost layer epidermis, then you have your dermis layer is there, and root again it is covered by an outer root sheath and an inner root sheath. There is like two coverings which will basically protect your root sheath. Okay, this is about the structure of your hair. So main important layers of your hair is the outermost covering of your hair is called as cortex, and sorry, outermost covering is cuticle, then comes your cortex, and the central or the middle one is your medulla. So cuticle is nothing but the outermost layer. Okay, so a lot of overlapping scales will be there. For example, this is your hair means the outermost covering is your cuticle, then comes your cortex, and then the innermost is your medulla here. So a lot of overlapping scales will be there in your cuticle. And cuticle is very important to differentiate whether it is a human or an animal hair that you obtained from a crime scene. Then you have your cortex. Cortex is one which gives, it has a lot of pigment granules which basically promotes color to the hair. And medulla is a central core, and medulla it may be continuous or it may be fragmented or absent. So cuticle and medulla are the important layers of your hair which will help in determining the difference between a human hair and an animal hair. Okay, so how would you collect a hair from a crime scene? First, you will collect it with a forceps, and then you have to do something called as tape lifting. That is nothing but hair is there at a crime scene means you put a tape and you just remove that particular tape from there. Or else combing from the head or pubic region or vacuum collection can also be done. Okay. Next, after collecting the hair very securely, you have to pack it in a separate, clean, dry envelopes. Okay, and after that, you have to take this. What I say? Usually, we take around like 25 to 50 pulled hairs will be there for relevant region. For example, it is a sample. So from scalp region, from pubic region, and all from suspect and from victim, we'll usually collect the hairs to identify and to link the suspect and victim involved in the crime scene. So the difference between human animal hair, which is a very important criteria here, when it when it talks about medulla, I told you medulla and cuticle are the very important aspects in differentiating between a human and animal hair. Medulla, it can be either continuous, fragmented, or even be absent. For example, in humans, it is usually absent or thin, and it is fragmented and continuous. So the medullary index for human hair is greater than 0.33. But for animals, the medulla is often wide and it is continuous or patterned, and the medullary index is basically greater than 0.5. And it comes to cuticle, the outermost covering of the pear. As I told you, there will be a lot of overlapping scales will be there, and there are a lot of patterns in those overlapping scales. For example, animals, for humans, it is generally imbricate pattern will be there. Animals, they'll be like spinous patterns will be there, coronal patterns will be there, different patterns and shapes will be there. For humans, it is mostly imbricate pattern only, normal hat shaft only we will have. Okay, so that is about your hair. Now, about the pigment in your hair. So, I told you pigment granules are mainly present in your cortex region, and the pigment granules are more uniformly, evenly distributed along the shaft region. So, animals, it is mainly very denser, and in terms of bands, you will get there are different colors, right? So, mainly for forensic science to identify the race of a person, to identify what type of hair, which area it is from, so the type, color, origin, whether it is a head hair or a pubic hair, or it is a cosmetic treated hair, if the person has done some hair coloring or any kind of hair treatment, that can be identified. So is there any association between the person and the scene, or between the animal and the scene? Everything can be utilized by using a hair as the biological evidence. And one more thing is that hair will have a follicular tissue, which is basically the tissue when you pull out the hair, at the ending of the hair, you have a follicular tissue or follicular tag will be there. This will be helpful in doing nuclear DNA profiling. Follicular, the root tissue will be used for nuclear DNA profiling, and the shaft region is for mitochondrial DNA. So, mainly for paternity and maternity testing, you can utilize the different layers or parts of the hair to do paternity and maternity testing. Okay. So now till now hair is clear. I hope so. The next will be starting with about the fibers. Okay.